My father denied me the family firm for being a woman, so I quit, built my own practice, and sued him in court alongside my incompetent brother. Now he's begging me to return, but the decision I made left everyone speechless. I'm 26 years old. I graduated from Harvard with honors. I've won 87% of the cases I've handled. And my father told me 4 months ago that I would never lead the family law firm because I'm a woman. Just like that, literally. No beating around the bush. Not because I wasn't good enough, not because my brother Bradley was a better lawyer, but because I was born with the wrong chromosome, according to him. And what happened after that? Well, I still don't know if it was the best or worst decision of my life, but it was definitely the most necessary one. I guess I should start from the beginning, so this makes sense. I grew up in Dallas, in one of those huge mansions in Highland Park where everyone knows everyone, and your last name defines who you are before you even open your mouth. My father, George Sterling, founded Sterling and Associates like 35 years ago and basically built one of the most respected law firms in Texas from scratch. I grew up watching my dad leave the house at 6 in the morning with his leather briefcase, the same one he used when he started, never changed it, and come back at 9 at night tired but satisfied. To me, he was like Superman, invincible. My mom, Dorothy, was the opposite. The type of woman who organized perfect dinners, smiled in all the charity photos, and never, ever, contradicted my father in public or private. Now that I think about it, I don't remember a single time my mother expressed an opinion of her own about anything important. Bradley, my brother who's 3 years older than me, was always the obvious heir in everyone's mind, or at least that's what the family thought. The problem is that Bradley is, how do I say this without sounding cruel? Basically incompetent. I'm not saying he's stupid, but he's not brilliant either. You know what I mean? He graduated from the University of Texas, not law school, just regular university, with a mediocre GPA. Worked at Dad's firm since he got out, because obviously, nobody else was going to hire him, and in 10 years he never handled a major case by himself. He always had someone else doing the heavy lifting while he showed up to client meetings, smiled, and basically got paid for existing. But he was the male son, so everything was fine in the Sterling universe. I, on the other hand, killed myself studying. Literally. Since high school, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, that I wanted to work at my father's firm, that someday I was going to take the Sterling name to a completely new level. I got accepted to Harvard full scholarship. By the way, graduated summa cum laude, came back to Dallas and started working at Sterling and Associates as a junior associate, just like any other recent graduate. I didn't ask for favors. I didn't want to be given cases for being the boss's daughter. I wanted to earn every opportunity. And I did. In 5 years, I became a junior partner, won cases that other lawyers with 20 years of experience had rejected, because they seemed impossible, built a solid reputation not as George Sterling's daughter, but as Amanda Sterling, period. And this whole time, I assumed my father saw what I was doing, that he noticed Bradley was still mediocre while I was shining, that when the time came to retire, the decision would be obvious. But looking back, I should have seen it coming. The little things I ignored because I didn't want to believe what they meant. How my father always introduced Bradley first at social events, even though I had won the firm's most important case that month. How at family gatherings he always talked about Bradley's future at the firm. But about my work, he'd only say, Amanda is also doing interesting things. How my mother looked at me with that mix of pride and pity when I talked about my professional ambitions. The day everything exploded was a Tuesday. I remember it perfectly because I had won a huge case that morning, like really big. And I was euphoric. My father called me to his office in the afternoon. I thought he was going to congratulate me, maybe give me a bonus or something. I sat across from his desk, that massive mahogany desk that always intimidated me when I was a kid, and he had that serious expression he wore when he was going to say something important. Bradley was there too, leaning back on the leather couch with that smug smile that always made me want to punch him. My father started talking about his retirement, that he was considering stepping back in the coming months, that it was time for the next generation to take control. My heart was beating super fast because I thought, this is it. He's finally going to recognize all my work. And then he said, I've decided that Bradley will be the next leader of Sterling and Associates. And I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on me. I sat there, completely frozen. while my father kept talking about transition plans and responsibilities, and Bradley was grinning like an idiot on that couch. When I could finally speak, my voice sounded weird, like it was coming from far away. I asked why. I needed to hear him say the words. My father cleared his throat, avoided my gaze, which should have told me everything, and said that Bradley was the oldest son, that it was tradition, that clients expected to see a man at the head of the firm. I insisted, pointed out that I had better credentials, more wins, better client relationships, literally any objective metric favored me. And my father finally looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Amanda, you're brilliant. But the reality is that this business works a certain way, and the most successful firms have men in leadership. That's simply how things are. And besides, you'll eventually get married, have children, your priorities will change." I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. Not that direct confirmation that no matter how hard I worked, I would never be enough because of something completely outside my control. Bradley didn't even have the decency to stay quiet. Said something stupid like, "Don't take it personally, Mandy." He hated when he called me Mandy. "You can always keep working here as a partner. Nobody's saying you're not valuable." That night, I went back to the family house. He still lived there because I was saving to buy my own place, and tried to talk to my mother. I thought maybe she, as a woman, would understand how unfair the situation was. But my mom just looked at me with those sad eyes she always had and said, "Your father knows what he's doing, Amanda. He built this firm. There must be a reason for his decision." I asked her if she had never wanted something more than being the perfect wife, if she had never felt frustrated about not having her own voice, and she stayed quiet for a long moment before saying, "Things were different in my time. I chose my life and I'm happy with it." But the way she said it, with that resigned tone, broke my heart because I realized my mother had buried her own dreams so deeply that she didn't even remember them anymore. I spent 3 days turning everything over. I cried more than I'd like to admit. Considered just accepting it and staying at the firm as a partner. Safe, comfortable, no conflict. Thought about all the reasons not to make a scene. But every time I tried to convince myself to stay, I felt this rage growing in my chest. This feeling that if I accepted this now, I would be accepting being less than everything I could be for the rest of my life. Friday morning, I walked into my father's office without knocking, which I never did. He was on the phone but hung up when he saw my face. I told him, "I'm going to resign. I'm leaving the firm and I'm leaving the house. And I need you to understand that it's not because I'm being dramatic or emotional or whatever other word you use to dismiss women who don't accept your bullshit. It's because I deserve to work in a place where they value me for what I can do, not for what I have between my legs." My father went pale, tried to say something about being reasonable, about not making hasty decisions, but I had already made the decision, and there was nothing he could say to change my mind. I packed my things from the office that same day. I didn't have much, honestly. Some law books, photos, the Harvard diploma I had hung with so much pride 5 years earlier. My colleagues looked at me with a mix of shock and admiration. Some whispered, but nobody dared say anything out loud. Bradley showed up when I was putting the last box in my car, an Audi A4 I had bought myself with my first bonus, and had the gall to look surprised. He told me, "You don't have to leave. We can work together. You'd be my right hand." And I just looked at him and said, "Bradley, I don't want to be anyone's right hand, much less yours. I want to be the head of my own operation." Finding a new job was easier than I expected, which was validating and depressing at the same time. Validating because it confirmed my reputation was solid, depressing because it meant other firms did recognize my value, but my own family didn't. 3 major firms in Dallas made me offers in 2 weeks. I chose Carter and Associates, a mid-sized firm but with interesting cases and a culture that seemed genuinely meritocratic. Vincent Carter, the founding partner, interviewed me personally and told me something I'll never forget. "I hire the best lawyers, period. I don't care if they're men, women, blue or green. If they can win cases and treat clients well, they have a place here." The first 2 months were intense but good. I was proving myself again, building new relationships, adapting to a different dynamic. I bought an apartment in Uptown, small but mine. And for the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to have true independence. My mother called me every week. Awkward conversations where she asked if I was eating well and I asked about the weather, both of us avoiding talking about what really mattered. My father didn't call once. Everything changed on a Thursday afternoon when Vincent asked me to come to his office. He closed the door, which was unusual, and told me he had a potential case but needed to know if I would be comfortable handling it before officially accepting it. Turns out a major client was suing Sterling and Associates for legal malpractice, the kind of case that could cost the firm millions of dollars and destroy its reputation if they lost. Vincent explained that the client had specifically sought them out because they had heard about my departure from Sterling and Associates and correctly assumed I knew the firm's internal procedures better than anyone. He asked me, "Can you handle this? Can you sue your own family?" I didn't answer immediately, which I think Vincent appreciated because it meant I was seriously considering the situation. I asked him for 2 days to think about it. Those 2 days were torture. Like I didn't sleep at all. Barely ate. Just turned it over and over in my head. On one hand, suing my father felt like crossing a line there was no coming back from, like officially declaring war against my family. On the other hand, rejecting the case because it was my family meant letting those ties limit me professionally again, exactly what I had been trying to avoid. In the end, the decision was simpler than I thought. If my father could make business decisions without considering our family ties, when he denied me leadership of the firm, then I could do the same. I told Vincent I accepted the case. The preparation was intense. The client, a mid-sized corporation, alleged that Sterling and Associates had mishandled an important merger, failing to identify key issues that resulted in millions in losses. They were right. By the way, I had seen the case from the inside and knew exactly what mistakes had been made and by whom. I built a solid strategy, gathered evidence, prepared every argument and counter-argument, and tried not to think about the fact that I was going to be standing in a courtroom facing my father. The first day in court was surreal. I walked into the room with my team, and there was my father sitting at the defense table with Bradley at his side and 2 other attorneys from the firm. The expression on my father's face when he saw me was something I'll never forget. Like shock, mixed with betrayal, mixed with something that almost looked like pain. Bradley looked more confused than anything, like he couldn't process what he was seeing. The judge came in before anyone could say anything, and the circus began. The opening arguments were professional, formal, exactly how a courtroom is supposed to be. But there was a tension in the air that everyone could feel. The other lawyers looked at us like they were watching a family drama unfold in real time, which I guess was exactly what was happening when it was my turn to present our opening case. I looked at my father directly and laid out every error, every negligence, every moment when Sterling and Associates had failed to meet the most basic professional standards. I didn't do it with anger or emotion. I did it with cold, hard facts, which was probably worse. During recess, my father tried to approach me in the hallway. I told him we couldn't talk, that it would be inappropriate, and he just looked at me with these sad eyes and said, "Do you really hate us that much?" And the truth is, I didn't. I didn't hate them, but I told him, "This isn't about hate, Dad. This is about doing my job, just like you did yours when you decided Bradley was more valuable than me for having a penis." He stood there, speechless, and I went back to my team. The next 3 sessions were a massacre. And I don't say that with pride, but as an objective fact. Bradley was handling parts of the defense, which was a massive strategic error on my father's part, and I tore him apart. In cross-examination, every question I asked exposed another gap in his knowledge, another area where he had been incompetent, another reason why giving him leadership of the firm was a disaster waiting to happen. At one point, Bradley got so nervous he literally forgot what question he had asked and had to ask the transcriber to read it again. It was almost sad, but it was also exactly what I needed to happen. My father tried to retake control in the 3rd session, and I have to admit that when he was at the front, I remembered why he had been so successful. He was good, really good. But I was better, and more importantly, I had the facts on my side. The facts were the facts. Sterling and Associates had made unforgivable mistakes in our client's case, and no amount of charisma or experience could change that. After 4 sessions, it was clear to everyone that we were going to win. The judge suggested a settlement, and after tense negotiations, we reached a settlement that heavily favored our client. Sterling and Associates was going to pay a significant amount, more than they probably wanted, but less than they could have lost if we had gone to verdict. When we signed the final papers, my father and Bradley left without saying a word, without even looking at me. My colleagues hugged me, Vincent took me to dinner to celebrate, but I felt weird, like empty. I thought that would be it, that we had closed that chapter in the most dramatic way possible, and everyone would move on with their lives. But 2 weeks later, my father showed up at my office. He didn't make an appointment, just arrived, and my assistant was so surprised she let him through without asking. He walked into my office looking older than I remembered him, like he had aged 10 years and 4 months. He sat across from my desk. Curious parallel to that conversation in his office that started all this, and told me he had come to apologize. That he had spent the last few weeks thinking about everything that had happened, that seeing how I had handled the case, how I had outperformed all his lawyers, including himself, had made him realize he had made the biggest mistake of his professional life. He said he had been a fool to let outdated ideas about gender blind him to the obvious talent he had in front of him, that I was exactly the kind of leader Sterling and Associates needed, and that Bradley, although he loved him as a son, clearly wasn't prepared for the role he had tried to force him into. I don't know what I expected him to say, like I hadn't rehearsed this moment. I asked him what exactly he wanted, what he hoped to accomplish with this visit. And then he did something completely unexpected. He offered me leadership of Sterling and Associates. He said he was willing to make a public announcement, to explain to Bradley that they had made a mistake, to do whatever was necessary to bring me back and put me where I should have always been. I should have felt triumph, vindication, all that "I told you so" euphoria I had imagined for months. But what I felt was more complicated. I told him I needed time to think about it, that this wasn't a decision I could make in the moment. My father nodded, got up to leave, and at the door he turned around and said, "Whatever you decide, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry for not telling you that enough before. I've been considering it for 3 weeks now. Vincent has told me he'll support me in whatever decision I make, that I have a bright future here if I decide to stay, but that he understands if I want to return to the family legacy. My colleagues have divided opinions. Some think I'd be an idiot to reject the opportunity to lead such a prestigious firm. Others say I already proved my point and that I should build something completely my own, instead of going back to where they didn't want me. The truth is, I don't know what I'm going to do. Part of me wants to go back, just to prove I can. Take what my father built and make it even better, to demonstrate that a woman can lead Sterling and Associates not just competently, but brilliantly. Another part of me feels like going back would be like validating everything that happened, like saying it's okay they treated me that way because in the end I got what I wanted. And a third part, the smallest but maybe the most important, wonders if I really want to spend the rest of my life working with a family that had to watch me destroy them in court before recognizing my value. What I do know is this: I won. Not the way I imagined when I was a kid dreaming about working alongside my father. Not in the clean and happy way you see in movies. But I won. I proved I'm as good, no, better than everyone thought. I built a reputation independent of my last name, and now, for the first time in my life, I have real options based completely on my merits. Yesterday, my mother called me, which was unusual because we usually only talk on Sundays, and she told me something that surprised me. She said, "When I saw you in that courtroom, defending your position without apologizing, without shrinking, I realized I never had that kind of courage, but I'm glad you do." And that, coming from her, meant more than I can explain. I still don't know what I'm going to decide about my father's offer, but at least now the decision is mine.